Breads can be made into many different shapes, and these are just some of them. Here I have chosen a basic white flour dough with a hydration of 68%, 2% salt and 0.7% instant dry yeast. I chose this specific dough because it will work well enough for all these shapes. It has also been cold fermented to make it easier to handle. But let's get to shaping, and our first shape is a boule. Boule in French means ball, so we are making a round loaf. Every shape starts with a piece of dough that has been rested. And pretty much every shaping method starts with the dough placed on the table with the smooth side down. To make the boule, we flatten out the dough, then we grab an edge, pull it, and then fold it over the middle. Then we turn the dough and repeat these steps until we reach the point where we started. Then we flip the dough with the smooth side up and tighten it against the table. We use friction, letting the dough stick to the table as we pull the dough towards us and side to side. Finally, we can pick it up and pinch the seam together at the bottom. Then the dough goes in a bread basket with the seam side up, and it comes out the oven looking something like this. That's the boule. Next I'm going to show you how to shape a batard. It is a elongated loaf. It starts off the same way as the boule, but once it's been flattened, we'll take the two top corners and cross them over in the middle. This creates a rough triangle shape. Then we take the point of the triangle and fold it down. Now we turn the dough around and repeat the same steps on the other side. Next we take the two loose ends and fold them over in the middle. And finally we roll the dough up into a nice tight loaf. It's worth noting that pretty much every shape can be achieved by different shaping methods. A batard could be shaped in several different ways. And you can make the ends stubby or pointy, it's up to you. Let's move on to our next shape, and that'll be a baguette. This time I will show you a couple different shaping methods. The first one is perhaps the simplest one. Once again we get our dough nice and flat, and then all we need to do is roll it up nice and tight, starting from the top down to the bottom. And then we need to roll it out longer to give it that distinct baguette shape. Baguettes can also have stubby or tapered ends, it's up to you. Baguettes are usually proofed with the seam side up, in between the folds of a linen cloth called a couche. Proofing baskets and couches just help the bread keep its shape. Okay, second baguette shaping method. Flatten the dough, fold 1/3 of it down, then turn it around and repeat that step. Then turn it again, and now we want to use the fingers of one hand to fold it over itself and the heel of the other hand to pinch the seam shut. Shaping is not only there to give the dough a certain shape, it is also there to build tension. And with good tension, we get good oven spring, meaning that if you shape it tightly, the dough will puff up better as it bakes. Of course there are caveats to this, but generally that's how it works. There is definitely a risk of tearing the dough shaped too tight. Let's move on to shape number 4, and that's the sandwich loaf. Here we want to flatten the dough out until it has a rough rectangle shape. Next we'll roll it up, starting from the top down to the bottom. Here we want to end up with a piece of dough that's as straight and evenly thick as possible. And that's because we want it to conform to the shape of the baking tin. And we want the loaf to come out the oven with a straight and smooth surface. Loaves like these can be scored before baking, but that all depends on how sturdy the dough is. If it's super light and puffy, scoring might just make it collapse. Okay, let's move on to a slightly more intricate shape, the 3-strand braid. It can start off with 3 round dough balls or 3 cylindrical shaped dough pieces. I like to keep it simple these days, so I just go with round pre-shaping most of the time. We want to roll the pieces of dough out to an equal length. The length of the strands depends on how big the dough balls are and how long you want your loaf to be. Once you have rolled out all of them, roll them one more time to ensure that they're all the same length. When it comes to braiding, it's important to start off with the correct position. Lay the strands vertically in front of you. First connect the 2 side strands and only then lay the middle strand over them. To create a nice looking point, the middle one should be on top. Starting from either side, fold 1 strand of dough over and then fold over the one from the opposite side. Keep alternating between sides and folding over, trying to make it as tight as you can. Once you've reached the end, pinch all the strands together and finally tuck the ends of the loaf underneath to make it look nice and neat. And of course, just as with the batard, the ends of a braided loaf could also be tapered. Next we'll make another braided loaf, a 4-strand braid this time. It starts off exactly the same way. We have 4 pieces of dough and we roll them out to an equal length. Lay 2 strands in front of you horizontally, spaced about an inch apart. Take the 3rd strand and place it over 2 strands vertically. Then lay one of the bottom horizontal strands over the vertical strand. Take the final strand and lay it next to the other vertical strand. And then cross it over with the bottom horizontal strand. Now take the top left strand, then fold it over the strand that is next to it on the right side. Then grab the following loose strand and fold it over the next one. Repeat this step 2 more times. We've gone around clockwise. Now we'll repeat the same steps going around anti-clockwise. Depending on how long the strands are, you may repeat this a couple times. Once the strands become too short to be folded, tuck them underneath the loaf, and that's the shaping done. It's worth noting that braided shapes work best with low hydration dough, and usually such decorations are meant for enriched breads. But there are no rules, of course, you can braid whatever you like. Next I'll show you how to make a little soup roll, or petit pan, which is also known as Brötchen in German, and it's just a miniature version of shaping a large loaf. Here I opted for a simpler shaping, crossing the 2 top corners over in the middle, creating a triangle shape, which can then be rolled up nice and tight. Any shape that you can give to a big bread, you can also give to a small bread. Moving on, here's a simple way to shape a bagel. Bagels also have different shaping methods. This is the simplest one. All you need to do is poke a hole right down through the center of the dough ball. Once you have created the hole, pick it up and slowly and gradually stretch it open. And once you're happy with the size, it's done. Usually it will pull back slightly, so before you boil the bagel, I would suggest stretching it out one more time. An alternative shaping method for the bagel would be rolling the dough ball out to a long strand and then connecting the ends together. I would suggest rolling it to about 30 centimeters or 1 foot long. Okay, that's shape number 8, the bagel. Let's move on to the final shape of this project, and that's the pita, the bread pocket. Here you take a dough ball that's been rested, grab a rolling pin and roll it out nice and flat. You have to play around with the thickness to get it right, because if it's too thin or too thick, it won't puff up very well in the oven. But pita might just be the most forgiving type of bread. It's a bit more difficult to mess it up, and even if you do, just pretend that it's naan. And there you have it, that's how you make 9 different breads out of one dough. Boule, batard, baguette, sandwich loaf, 3-strand braid, 4-strand braid, petit pan, bagel and pita. Scroll down to the video description where you will find links to full-length videos about each of these breads. Down there you will also find 17 more links for breads of even different shapes. There's tortilla, hot dog rolls, fougasse, naan, monkey bread, paratha, pide, ciabatta, English muffins, Kaiser rolls, a bread shaped like a pumpkin, a Bhutanese steam bun called tingmo, yellow split pea filled flatbreads called dalpuri roti. There's a Bangladeshi flatbread called bakar khani, pretzels, focaccia and pizza, and cinnamon rolls. That's 27 breads, and that's not even all. If you go through my channel you can find many more. These were just some of the more distinct ones, the classic ones. And of course there are many different bread shapes which I haven't tackled yet. Let me know of your favorite bread shape and which shaping technique would you like to learn. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. That will be it for today. Thank you so much for watching and I'll see you in the next one.